Now, not much of a theme to this one. It's just a silly story, so I'll get started. It's called Salesmanship. As a former telemarketer, I've dealt with all sorts of customers. Some rude and abrasive, others polite but uninterested. I met people from all spectrums, and it was a regular challenge to keep them on the phone long enough to warrant positive merit from our shift supervisors, or overlords as we called them. We were always busy. We were always being watched at Century Millennium International, a telemarketing firm I used to work at. Constant surveillance was part of the job, and when I finally got a prospective customer on the line past the 3-minute mark, they took notice. The thing is, Mr. Holt, it's a buyer's market right now. Our firm can put you in touch with a lender who can work at establishing a fixed rate to fit within your budget. Mr. Holt began. But that's not all, sir. The beauty of it is that you earn money from this investment, sometimes doubling what you put in. I explained every detail of the process when all of a sudden I heard a deafening blast on the other end of the line. Blam! The phone hit the ground, followed by silence. Mr. Holt, I said. Sir, are you there? Phone thing. There was no response. A hand touched my back, and I looked up to see my supervisor. That's enough, Fitzgerald. The boss wants to speak to you. I had him, Mr. McGough. I held my index finger a centimeter from my thumb. I was this close. Never mind that. Take off your headset and go see Mr. Hoffman. I rose from my rolling office chair among 20 other workstations on the floor and did the proverbial walk of shame to the boss's office, where I wasn't sure what to expect. Mr. Hoffman was at the desk of his spacious office on the second floor, talking on the phone. He looked up at me and signaled to one of the 2 chairs in front of him. "Thank you, officer, goodbye," he said, hanging up. As I sat, he removed his square frame glasses and rubbed his eyes, sighing. Fitzgerald, I don't know any other way to tell you this, but the prospective client you were just talking to, Mr. Holt, he appears to have died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. I was shocked. How is this possible? I asked. I was just talking to him. But Hoffman waved a hand and spoke in a grave tone. The police arrived at his apartment moments ago and confirmed it. And according to your internal report, this is the second suicide that has occurred under your watch. Stunned, I asked Hoffman to elaborate, but he really didn't need to. I could remember the last incident from 3 months ago as fresh in my mind as all the others. I was talking to another man about our investment offers when he suddenly threw himself out the window of the 11th floor of his building without rhyme or reason. "Now is the time to invest, sir," was all I had managed to say when I heard a loud crash, the sound of the wind rustling through the phone, followed by a crackling thud, of which I assumed to be his phone hitting the pavement. My boss was displeased with the latest incident. 2 weeks paid leave, Fitzgerald, until we can work this whole mess out. I went back home to my 1-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building I lived out downtown with time to contemplate Mr. Holt's suicide and its connection with the others. There was certainly something there, and I was determined to ruminate the patterns. 3.5 years ago, I had worked for a timeshare company, and during one of my tantalizing presentations, I was surprised to witness 2 couples commit mass suicide right in front of me. Steve and Elena Whitman had agreed to a 60-minute presentation for 2 free tickets to Universal Studios. I had also received attendance confirmation from Doug and Judy Alderman. The table in my rented exhibition room at the day's end was adorned with lovely appetizers, from vegetable platters to shrimp cocktail. The Whitmans arrived first, and I took a seat in the front row. The Whitmans arrived first and took a seat in the front row as I fiddled with the projector. I wore my best suit, and once the Aldermans showed up, I got straight down to business. "Why stay at a hotel when you can own your very own condominium?" I began. "The market has never been better for you to take advantage of this wonderful opportunity today." They followed me along for the first 20 minutes, but I soon began to notice a distant glaze in their eyes. Doug and Judy held up 2 small Dixie cups and drank from them without hesitation. Just as Judy began to convulse, the Whitmans gulped down their own similar-looking cups. Doug began foaming at the mouth. Judy fell over. Steve clutched his stomach and dropped to the floor. Elena fell back in her chair, consumed by violent spasms. "Excuse me, are you guys okay?" I asked. They were unresponsive, and after their multiple turbulent convulsions, I soon discovered that they were dead. The homicide detective later informed me that both couples had consumed a deadly cocktail of whiskey, drain cleaner, and cyanide. The company let me go the next day, citing irreconcilable differences. Trouble with that word. But I knew that they were only trying to save face in the coming onslaught of negative news coverage. I soon got a cat to counterbalance my despair following the timeshare debacle. Captain Whiskers was fluffy and gray with wide eyes, and he would often rummage through my apartment as I explained how I was going to become a famous real estate mogul. And that's just the beginning, Captain, I said, feet up in my recliner and swirling a glass of Merlot. Have you ever thought about investing in a property of your own? Later that week, I came home to find Captain Whiskers dead in the living room. I dropped my bag of groceries and flew to the floor in anguish. He had hanged himself with a ball of string I bought. Of course, it could have been accidental, but nothing looked particularly random about the careful tying of string around the fan blades. Why, Captain Whiskers? Why would you do such a thing? I bawled. It was about the lowest I'd ever felt until my indefinite suspension at Century Millennium. By then I had begun to see that I was at a hopeless juncture, and it was at that point where fate reared its intrusive head and changed my life forever. A knock came over my door. Not expecting anyone, I approached cautiously and looked through the peephole. Two large men stood there in suits wearing sunglasses. I opened the door a crack. Yes? Mr. Fitzgerald, one of the men said. That's me, I answered. Who are you and what do you want? A third man in a suit stepped forward. He had a thick head of wavy gray hair, almost annoying in its perfection. He introduced himself. I'm Fate, may we come in? Curious, I opened the door. Sure, why not? I said. I let Fate in, followed by his two apparent bodyguards. I asked them if they wanted tea or coffee or anything, but once inside, the man got right to the point. I don't want to take too much of your time. We read about you in the news the other day and all those suicides you've been blamed for. And not tightened in my stomach. It wasn't something I was proud of. I told him that such claims were unsubstantiated, as no one knew the real reasons behind them. Be that as it may, I have a proposition for you. You need a restart, my friend. Find another job, a different path. It's not too late. Fate paused and then delivered a stern warning. If you don't stop this pursuit of selling things, more people will die. I hesitated in my response, but that's what I do. Nothing is going to change that. Grab a jacket, he said. We're going to take a walk. Unemployed, desperate, and shunned, I followed them to a supermarket across the street where I applied for a job as a bagger. 2 months later, I had never been more content. I bagged groceries with a simple can-do attitude and was well on my way to working in produce. It was also the place where I met my wife, Nicole, who was a cashier at the time. I look back on that time in my life where I was lost and confused, trying to be something that I wasn't. Life had more purpose in that. When Nicole and I went out on our first date, I was hesitant with how I was going to sell myself, especially when I discovered that deep down inside, I didn't particularly like who I was. The suicides, I believe, happened because I was an insufferable person, but Nicole thought otherwise. It was my last and most successful sale to date. Thank you.